Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of The Watchers, brought to you by Drew and JC. Tonight we're talking wrestling. That is correct. Finally, another episode of Wrestling Watchers. It's been so long. We have a really cool guest to talk to, and as always, I'm just going to kick it over to him, let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Lawrence Zirconium, promoter of Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators, South Jersey's #1 wrestling promotion, DAWG Pro Wrestling. We get to check us out. We're #1. Other wrestling companies run shows. DAWG Pro Wrestling runs events. If you want to check out the difference, make sure you come to a DAWG Pro Wrestling event and you'll see the difference.
And
so how's everybody today?
That is how you promote a company, too. We are awesome now that we've finally gotten through all of our stupid.
Don't. You're gonna jinx it. Don't do it.
Yeah, please don't.
Yeah. So we had an interview before we talked to you, and my connection just kept dipping the entire time for 45 minutes. So we've at least lasted longer than that has happened this time around. We're excited to talk some wrestling here. It's been a while. Our channel definitely likes to promote it. I guess we talked a little wrestling a few weeks ago with Cameron.
Yeah. Mick Foley's favorite comedian.
Yeah. But, it's been a while since we, jumped right into it. So how long have you been doing this?
Promoting itself since 2010, so that's 15 glorious years. We had our first event on April 24th, 2010 at the Ocean Sports Arena. I don't think that's there any longer, but that's in Ocean, New Jersey, which was actually North Jersey. And we've been promoting ever since. We do events all over the state of New Jersey, especially South Jersey oriented. And we do really, really great professional wrestling, old school professional wrestling with new school action and athletics.
So 15 years then. What made you decide to get into the business?
I was a professional wrestler, started professional wrestling when I was 18 years old, did wrestling school from 17, had my first match a few months after my 18th birthday, love professional wrestling. It's always been my background to want to do a professional wrestling company, but I was doing things first. Got a knee injury, put me out for a little bit. Then, unfortunately, I broke my neck. I started doing managing, and after breaking my neck, ironically, not from wrestling, I was unloading trucks. But I started doing managing, and I started doing refereeing. I started doing commentary. Did just about everything, but it's always been my goal to run my own wrestling company. I actually have a degree and wrote both radio and television production, and I was always using that. Also have a degree in psychology. So I was always using that as a way to, something I wanted to do. Started working with other promoters until they kind of were old school carnies and garbage and absolutely horrible people, and decided, you know what, instead of making money for everybody else, I want to do it for myself. Then I realized that in professional wrestling, the only way you make money is if you want to make $1 million, you got to start off with $2 million. Either way, though, DAWG Pro Wrestling's been thriving since the beginning of the company, and we've been looking to do everything we can to try to become bigger and better.
That's awesome. I can relate to that. My wrestling career was ended with my neck injury, and it also wasn't in the wrestling ring. I was training at PWX in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. It's famously where Kurt Angle came up. And I got hit by a Mack truck, and that completely destroyed my neck. And that actually happened way before I started training. That happened probably around the same time you started running your company. I think 2011. And I didn't have neck surgery until last year. Maybe I'm going on 2 years since my surgery. So I was just living life with this horrible neck injury, and made it through training, and as I was being put into the next position, like I was reffing, and they were gonna from there start putting me in matches. My body just gave out. So, man, I completely relate to losing that to a neck injury that wasn't even part of the business.
If I remember correctly, the PWX was actually once part of the National Wrestling Alliance. So was Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. So we have a little bit of common there, but not only with the bad necks, but you were working for the PWX and they were part of the NWA just like DAWG was.
Yeah, PWX, I think, rebranded, and a lot of the guys that I was coming up with went over to, I believe it's called Phoenix Pro Wrestling. It's ran by Brandon Kay, who was my head trainer. And I haven't, unfortunately, heard a lot of positive things about what used to be PWX. There is a lot of stuff going on recently that someone just started texting me, like some of the drama. I stayed out of it, but yeah, it was a rad company there for a while, for sure.
Yeah, if you try to stay away from drama in wrestling, it's very difficult. They like to suck you in and bring you a part of it. But I always try to save that drama for your mama.
Yeah. The cool thing is, my class that I was in, I came in right after Lee Moriarty. So, like, I get to watch guys who helped, kind of teach me a little bit, or that I would stretch with, or Lee specifically was the one who taught me how to build the ring. And, now I'm watching him in, like, Ring of Honor and AEW and stuff. So it's always, like, it's bittersweet because, there's always that, like, man, like, I wish I could still be doing this. But at the same time, it's really cool to see guys that I was, coming up with actually having really nice success stories. So, I mean, do you have any of those success stories that you like came up with that kind of like skyrocketed?
Yeah, wrestling, a lot of them have, but I actually love bragging about some of the guys who work for Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators have really worked their way up there. Before I was even working with DAWG when I was working with somebody else. I gave wrestlers like Lince Dorado his early break before he was even in Chikara. And he's obviously working for the WWE as part of the trainer, was a WWE superstar, wrestled all over. Very, very talented wrestler. Anthony Nese worked for us, and he's now working for AEW. There's a lot of them. Joe Gacy, who works for WWE. A lot of the wrestlers have worked their way through DAWG and now have worked their way to the big time. I know a lot of them, they work for Impact, they work for WWE, they work for AEW, and some of them work their way back down. Like we recently had Nick Camarado. He was in both NXT and AEW. Rhett Titus has worked with Ring of Honor, and Rhett's worked with us a lot of times. You can see wrestlers. We've used some of the most talented wrestlers throughout the NWA. We used to be a member of the National Wrestling Alliance, so you'll see a lot of people who worked their way there now. And it's really nice to see people that have either worked their way up when we were just starting and work and being in the bigger companies, or always kind of remember us and work their way down. I mean, we've had some great professional wrestling. Rick and Molly Gursky worked with us a lot now too. Fallah Bah, Tank Tolan, who was part of the WWE. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones we've used. Davey Boy Smith Jr. We had a great match with Donovan Dijak versus the World Wrestling Grand Prix champion David Goldie. DAWG sanctioned by the World Wrestling Grand Prix. It's kind of like our version of the NWA now. And WWGP champion David Goldie, who you also might have seen take the best crossroads ever with Cody Rhodes. If you look up the best crossroads, and so it went viral, and you can see it. He also was part of the Monster Factory. They did a documentary on not Netflix, on Apple TV, and he was part of that documentary. He's very, very talented. He's going somewhere. Did New Japan Strong. Very extremely good wrestlers, and he had a match against Donovan Dijak that just destroyed everything. It was so great. And we also use like a lot of women wrestlers. Valerie Verman is the World Wrestling Grand Prix Women's Champion, and she's been making a name for herself. Notorious Mimi. We just used one called Zenith, Very talented wrestler you need to keep an eye out for. So we've had some very good wrestlers. In fact, DAWG's known for using the absolute best cream of the crop, just the best professional wrestlers. And we also use a wrestler called Daredevil Dave Dahl, who's definitely not that.
You brought up Nick. Nick, I always mispronounce his name. Cormorado. Yeah. That is a great example of somebody that has a look and I thought was just underutilized every time I ever saw him. Like, I was always rooting for that dude. He, especially like when he was, featured in AEW a lot. Like, I just kept thinking, like, all right, this dude is going to work his way up. He's going to get through all of these dark tapings. It might take a while, but you have to be crazy not to see something in this guy. And it was a bummer that it didn't work out there. So I'm glad he's still working indies and like building towards that. And I really hope he has a high enough profile at some point that he can move up. Just speaking from a fan perspective, and not even from somebody who spent as little time in the business as I did, like, he, in my opinion, had that it factor that you could work with.
Yeah, he kind of reminded me of Ogre from Revenge of the Nerds, for anybody old enough to know that movie.
I love that movie.
He's a big boy, big, strong boy. And I say boy, yeah, but everybody's a boy. I'm an old man, so everybody's a boy to me. But he is big and strong, and I have a feeling we're going to see him on TV somewhere. There's a lot of wrestlers that I don't understand why they're not on TV. Richard Holiday is another wrestler we used. Why is he not on a bigger platform? So incredibly talented. I don't know why he's not in a bigger place. We used a young wrestler, former DAWG champion called Ray Jazz. He did some MLW in the past. He's done some Impact Wrestling in the past, but he's another wrestler that should be somewhere on a bigger platform right now that does not get his dues. We've used former NWA World Women's Champion. Oh crap! I just drew a blank on her name. My brain just stopped. I cannot think of her name, and I don't know why my brain just stopped on that one. But she was an older wrestler, and she just recently retired, but she was so incredibly talented. And I'm picturing her face, I'm picturing her name, and I cannot get ladies and gentlemen, this is why you don't take chair shots. This is why you tuck your chin with a bump. Brain damage is real. And fortunately, I've an example of somebody who has a genius IQ and a Swiss cheese brain. Lots and lots of holes in my memory from stupid things that I've done. So this is why you should not take chair shots, and make sure you tuck your chin on your bumps, and be careful and take care of your brain, and get some phosphatidylserine and some ashwagandha and some good stuff and to keep your brain going. Because if not, you're going to end up stupid like me.
I definitely have CTE. I say it all the time. There's no way that I don't, but it's not even all just from like the little time I spent in the pros. We grew up, we're in our mid-30s. I'm not sure how old you are, but we grew up in that like prime backyard wrestling era too, where we were out there in like middle school and high school just beating the bloody hell out of each other, pretending to be wrestlers while we were in school. And the amount of chair shots that I took doing that is embarrassing at this point in my life to admit to, but I guess when you're like 15, you think it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, and you don't think about, like, I have really bad knees and bad injuries. Even before I broke my neck, I'm a walking injury. I got 6 titanium screws in the right knee. That's the good knee. And I did hockey, I did boxing, I did mixed martial arts, I did regular martial arts, I did boxing, I did amateur wrestling. I was always physically active. And boy, my body feels every bit of that nowadays that I'm 48 years old, I think. Yeah, 48 years old. I'm not even sure my age because I got a lot of like brain damage, like I told you.
You're still a spring chicken, man. Like Terry Funk was doing it in his almost 80s. So you're just middle aged at this point when it comes to wrestling.
I got the crazy part. Maybe not middle aged, but I definitely have the crazy part.
We're running on the Dory Funk Jr. Timeline here, so you're good up until like 98.
There you go.
I don't think I'll live it. I don't think I'll live that long. I'll be shocked if I make it to 50, and that's only 2 years away.
He just had a like last year. He was just in like a exploding ring death match, and I'm like, what are you? what is happening in Japan?
It's the best thing. That's the best thing. I love it. When I remember seeing that, I watched that. So, 18, you said you got into it. I'm terrible at math, so like, what at 18 drew you to pro wrestling that didn't draw you to pro wrestling in those first 18 years?
I was a part of wrestling since I've been in love with wrestling since I was 3 years old. I used to go to wrestling events, but 18 is when I actually had my first match. But like I was, my ultimate goal was always to be a pro wrestler. Unfortunately, I wanted to be 6'9", blue eyes, or blonde hair, and jacked to the gills, and I have gray eyes, so technically, I guess it's close enough. But I never got the rest of it. Unfortunately, I never got to the 6'9" or the long blonde hair. I had long blonde hair when I was younger. I don't have any of it now. I don't have, definitely was never jacked to the gills, but I was never going to be WWF champion at the time because I realized I was too small. And back then, when I was a pro wrestler, I was easily the smallest one in the wrestling, and meant I had to take all the bumps and got thrown around like I was, like I was a rag doll. But I will love pro wrestling forever. And if I would have came in today, I think I might have had a much better shot. A lot more wrestlers are my size now.
Yeah.
But back in my day, everybody was a giant, and there were not a lot of smaller guys that did everything they can to keep us out. And even when we were there more to get beat up. But I love professional wrestling since the day, as far as I can remember. In fact, when it comes to promoting, I love absolutely everything about promoting professional wrestling, except for absolutely everything about promoting professional wrestling.
I can imagine it's a total pain in the ass. I don't have a lot of experience in that regard. Or we've interviewed, when we talked to Kato, we talked to him a little bit about that side of it. But there is something that I absolutely would like to know more about. I imagine, like, from the promotion side, it's always been like, online especially, you promoters are the bad guy to a lot of the talent out there. Like, any Reddit or message board that I had read, I guess before I was super, in the business, everybody always kind of talked about how like promoters were carnies and con men, and I mean all the way back to like, I mean, you're talking like Bruiser Brody or whatever, who used to like really piss with the promoters at the point where it ended up getting him killed. So like, what's it like being a promoter? If like, do you take heat like that?
I generally have most of my wrestlers like me, respect me. They understand that that I'm not. I grew up in the carny days, and I knew the scumbags and the douchebags and the people that the worst people in the business, and they generally were just that. One of the first things I learned is, never trust a promoter. So I always tried to do my best, but a promoter should always do what's best for the company. The problem is most of these promoters are all about ego. They want to put all their attention on themselves. You'll never see me put myself in the ring or anything like that, or put myself in front of the camera. It's never about me. It's always about the product. I try to do things that I've seen the opposite of what I grew up with and what I've seen when I was wrestling, when I was part of the business earlier. So I try to be absolutely everything opposite. There a lot of wrestlers do hate promoters and don't understand. I think they don't pay them well. But a lot of the wrestlers try to become legitimate promoters, they have a full new understanding, and you'll see like Richard Holiday is a perfect example. He just promoted his first show, and he was talking about how he understands promoters way more. And a lot of wrestlers don't like when you tell them to do this or don't want to listen. But if somebody's putting out their own money and they want you to do something a certain way, you do it that way. In my day, if you try to argue or do things that wrestlers nowadays try to do, they would shoot on you and beat the crap out of you or throw you out of the business. It was so hard to get in wrestling. Nowadays, it's so much easier and kids don't understand, but it's their promotion. If they want you to do something a certain way, you guys have to do it. And and not talk back and not try to fight everything and try not to do things your own way. And a lot of wrestlers don't understand that, but it's your butt on the line. Here's a perfect example. If a wrestling promoter has insurance, right? That covers you have two types of insurance. You have full coverage and you have the building. If you have insurance, it only covers the building. When I do my insurance, I cover the building and I cover the fans. If a wrestler goes out and fights in the crowd and they hurt a fan, I'm covered. They're not. They're not a limited liability company, and they can get sued. Not only that, but even if they do something stupid and a fan gets hurt, my insurance can sue them.
Okay.
If my insurance has to pay off a thing because somebody does something stupid, if you actually read the fine print, and I've actually had to talk with my insurance company when they were talking about this because they had to deal with a lot of pro wrestlers promotions in the past, so they're very strict on what you can get away with. And if you have insurance and you go out and fight in the fans and land on somebody and hurt somebody, the insurance company can sue you and to try to recoup some of their money. And I know these wrestlers, they barely have insurance for health insurance. They don't have money for, a lot of this stuff. They could lose their house and they don't realize it. And I try to tell them that, just don't go in that crowd. And if they do it and I say something to them and they ever do it, if they do it and I don't listen, I don't use them again. You can lose buildings and stuff like that. If you damage stuff and it costs money, that's money out of my pocket. That means it's harder to get insurance. It's also harder for everybody else to get insurance. And I'd say, at least in New Jersey, I always have insurance because I know what it's like, and some buildings require it, but it's not required by state. So a promoter could lose his entire life. GCW had an original name. It was Game Changer before it was Game Changer Wrestling. It was another name. And the promoter got sued because of something they damaged, and they had to change the name of the company. People don't realize that. So, yeah, there's a lot of things you don't realize as a promoter. Here's another example. If you go in a ring and you get hurt, a fan gets hurt, if they go into the ring, say you invite them in to take pictures or something like that, and they twist their ankle or break their ankle and sue, they're not covered. So if you bring a fan in the ring, you lose your insurance. You're not being covered. So that means now they sue you.
Oh, wow.
People don't know that. Wrestling promoters, they bring people all the time and they bring them in the ring, or they let the fans do whatever, or they have their friend go in the ring and they do something that aren't trained. Anybody who's not an actual professional wrestler goes in that ring and gets hurt, they're not covered. Now, if they jump in the ring themselves, like they're just trying to fight, that's a different thing. That's something that's, they're not covered anyway, but you can sue them for it. But if you bring a fan in the ring and they get hurt, then your insurance does not cover them. They're no longer covered. So you're liable for the lawsuit.
So let me ask you this then, and I know you're not a lawyer or anything, but I guess over, last weekend, we got to see that awful Rampage Raja Jackson incident.
Yeah.
And I've been reading a lot about that, and even listening to Busted Open and whatnot, and Tommy Dreamer going in depth about the mass transit incident back in ECW. He said wrestling lawsuits are such a gray area because it is a worked business. Could you not, as a defense, I know it's super awful and carny, but could you not say that this fan had agreed to some worked spot and it went bad, and couldn't you kind of use that as a defense to?
No, they're not trained. If you actually read the policies, if you read these policies, they are not a trained worker. If you agree to let a fan in the ring to do something like that, then you are liable.
Okay.
So if you have insurance, they can sign whatever they want. They're not a trained professional, so not letting them in that ring, they get hurt. They can agree. We could sign them waivers or whatever. Waivers are only as good as your lawyer. You can go to a gym right now. You go to a gym, there's all kinds of waivers they have you sign. But you know what? If you put your initials down, then that automatically makes it harder for them to do something. A good lawyer can get away with anything. You got yourself. I don't mean like those ambulance chasers. You got a good lawyer. You go to that gym and they want you to have a arbiter and stuff like that. You have to talk to arbitration, or you have to say you'll have a thing. If that is, you can sign that contract, but if a good lawyer, they can get their way around that. So yeah.
Okay, so as a promoter, then, do you have any thoughts about that incident? As far as the kind of legalities, or I feel like a lot of the discourse seems to be that it's just going to be something that has no resolution, and everybody will move on, and there won't be any lawsuits because it's going to be impossible to prove one way or the other what was worth and what wasn't supposed to be worth. But from a promoter's point of view, say something like that happens on your watch, like, how are you handling things?
I'm very careful who we involve with at all. So Roger Jackson would have never had anything to do with it. First of all, I do not allow drinking in my environment. If you're drinking and I find out about it, you're not wrestling. You're not going to be on the card. So if I find out you're drinking, whatever, that right there immediately is a red flag. So the wrestlers were in the back drinking. That doesn't belong in professional wrestling. That's something right there. I don't know if California requires license, but that right there should get them cause an issue right there with any kind of licensing. Second, one of the things that they are doing is, they said, they shoot or get your receipt. They have this all in there. People have, if you were watching his live stream, he's saying the whole time, like, he's going to kick his ass and beat the shit out of him and everything like that. Right on his live stream says, I ain't doing no fake. And right there, that's intent. So if they were really trying to go after him, there's intent to injure. And then the fact that what he did, 23 unanswered legitimate punches, that's attempted murder. That's an assault at the very least. So anybody willing to, they could get him. Now, here's the thing, too. That could cost him his MMA licenses. So that could screw up his MMA career. And that could put him in jail. I 100% think Psycho Stu should... yes, he was drunk, and yes, it was stupid, and yes, hitting him with the can was stupid. But that's why people that aren't involved with the wrestling business, who don't have a respect for the wrestling business, shouldn't be involved at all. That's a fault of the promoter. That's a fault of the wrestlers. There's a lot of fault going around, and Roger Jackson is definitely a lot of that fault. If I was Psycho Stu, I would get a good lawyer. I would make sure that he goes to jail. I would go after him. I would go after his father. I would go after anything I can, because legitimately, that's just a piece of garbage looking to legitimately hurt himself. That is a person who does not belong on the street, let alone in MMA, let alone a wrestling ring. That's a person that belongs locked up, because he intentionally, with intent, with malice, said he was going to hurt that person and do what he was going to do. And his home live chat was egging him on to do such a thing. That's somebody who does not have the mental capability that needs to be in an environment. He needs to be put in a situation where he's locked up. Maybe he can be rehabilitated, but it's purely wrong upbringing. That's somebody, you could blame the streets, you could blame his family. That's just somebody who was not raised properly and does not have the mental capability to be able to understand these things. There's a lot of people. I always go with the Diaz brothers. If the Diaz brothers if they were in an MMA, they would be locked up in jail. They probably would have murdered somebody. They probably would have been locked up for selling drugs or something. And that's another example. They're just somebody. I'm just a small town bird lawyer, but that's somebody who does not belong to be in the street. That's somebody who needs to learn respect, needs to be punished, because things have consequences. That's the one problem nowadays that kids and a lot of people don't understand, is actions have consequences. A lot of these kids will sit there and put their hand in fire and then complain that the fire burned them. Oh my God, I can't believe the fire burned me. They don't understand that things happen for a reason, and that if you do something stupid, then you deserve to have the bad thing back happen to you. They just need to learn that life has consequences, and that's what Roger Jackson didn't understand. He's always had it. His father even put off that he has 4 kids. 2 of them are from Japan or for the Japanese woman, 2 are not, and he saved money for the college education for the 2 Japanese kids, and then he saved bail money for the 2 kids that were in America. Right there, that's an example that they are not properly raised, and they needed to get the shit kicked out of them. I apologize, I'm cursing. They need to get the crap kicked out of them. They need to get their asses beat and learn respect from a long time, because that's the problem right now, is they did not understand. They did not have that, do not understand that consequences, and consequences need to be delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. That was horrendous. And just the online discourse, I had to avoid it at this point because it's so pessimistic. And the longer it goes on, you get these like crazy weirdo a-holes that are now like defending it, like, oh, well, Stu is the problem. And it's like, man, you guys, I can tell you guys have the only thing you know about the business is what you've seen on TV, and like, and now everything that you're saying on Reddit. It's been incredibly annoying, but I also think that in today's day and age, right, most people, I think, get into wrestling because they grew up as wrestling fans. And when you go back, like 30, 40, however many years ago, when it was more so like, this is a business and we get into this for like one reason or another. Like Hulk Hogan didn't grow up a wrestling fan, but he went on to become Hulk Hogan. And that's why he was so business minded his entire career. And I think a lot of people come up now like, well, I'm a wrestling fan and I want to go out and I want to have like banger matches and I want to do this. And I was a fan, so this is what I'm going to do. And I think a lot of younger people allow themselves to be put into compromised situations because they don't have their head on completely straight from a business perspective versus like, man, that looked really cool. And I'm one of those guys that was in that same camp of like, oh, absolutely, like throw me off of a 50-foot ladder, 3 thumbtacks, and I'll catch on fire, and then we can blow me up with some fireworks or something, and it'll look super cool. But like without any like actual thought being put into like, well, this is going to hurt pretty bad, and that could have like repercussions. So I just think like a lot of guys now won't even think about the consequences of maybe even getting involved with like a Raja Jackson or something to that effect.
No, everybody wants those viral moments right now. And here's the thing. If you're going out drunk driving and you kill somebody in a car, it's your action right there, your irresponsibility to cause that person to no longer be alive. And in wrestling back in the day, they gate kept. You weren't allowed in. Tully Blanchard was legitimately one of the biggest pieces of shit assholes in the wrestling business. Most wrestlers hated him, but if somebody did anything to Tully Blanchard, they would have been out there beating the crap out of that. The fact that the referee didn't try to stop, that some 17-year-old kid first, and then the big guy came in later, they should have never let Raja Jackson walk out of there. In the old school days, they would have snapped body parts on him. And that's, people are like, oh, in wrestling, that's so barbaric. But it kept people who did not belong in the business out of it. I'd say 85, 90% of people who are in wrestling nowadays should be on the other side of the guardrail. I'm old school. I know it was like wrestling's for everybody. No, wrestling's not. Wrestling for everybody as a fan. Inside that ring, wrestling's not for anybody. Not for everybody. You just can't go pick some guy off and go play in the NFL or the NHL or the Major League Baseball. And wrestling should be the same way. It should be kept for only the cream of the crop. And yes, there's like the independents or the minor leagues, and people make it to the minor leagues and stuff like that. But the people even getting to the minor leagues is a fraction of the people that played. Like I use hockey. I played hockey. The people that make it into the ECHL, which is 2 leagues down from the NHL, they're better than 85% of the people who've ever played hockey. And they're doing it for the love because they want to make themselves a name for themselves to get to the AHL, then get to the NHL. But you're not going to put somebody who's 105 pounds who barely knows how to ice skate and put him in an ECAHL game, let alone an AHL or a NHL game, because you know why? They get hurt and they wouldn't be able to do it and they would get severely injured. That's what I believe, unfortunately, professional wrestling should be like, because there's a lot of people who do not belong in the ring, who don't respect it, who think of it's a video game or think of it as a somebody playtime, and that's where these Raja Jacksons come in, that people don't understand, don't respect it, and they sneak in, and people don't let them in the back door, and next thing you know, this incidences like this happen. It's a black eye on the business, and but people don't understand that. They just want to play professional wrestling, and wrestling shouldn't be something that's played. It's a sport and it's a business, and it needs to be treated as both.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely, I agree. What people literally used to die in this business. Like I brought Bruiser Brody up earlier. Like that's only just one example, like a famous example. Like if somebody is taking liberties with your guys, like it is common practice, at least back in the day, that you take those liberties. That's where the concept of the receipt came from, where the Raja thinks he's okay to get a receipt. And it ended up costing them like their WWE ID thing, which I'm not super familiar with how that works. I was actually going to ask you about that, being a promoter of the Indies, if you have had any discussions or have worked towards a WWE ID program at all as well, just because I don't really know a whole lot about it.
We don't have a wrestling school, so we wouldn't be ID qualified anyway. But what the WWE ID is, it's a way to lock up independent talent. Think of it as, say, you see some prospects that are in high school or middle school, if you're like one of those basketball or a baseball organization or even football or whatever, and you see these prospects and you want to lock them up now so they get proper development and they get trained at these schools and they get proper looks and they get their name out there and they get some exposure, and you're using the WWE name without actually having them under a big time contract. It's a way to kind of make sure that you see these young prospects and you're help gearing them to the right way. And I know a lot of people, like, they were very upset that the DAWG Pro got a WWE development ID program because they were not the most respected promotion in California. I have friends who over there in California, and they were considered a low level. The only reason they got any association is because it was Rikishi, and it was a family favor. A lot of people told me that. But what the WWE IDs were was, you are a young prospect that is not quite ready for NXT, not quite ready for developmental to be signed by contracts. You still need to get your name out there. You still need experience. You still need ring time. But this allows you to work these places and get this exposure and this name and get a little bit of extra money in the process to try to help you develop into that big talent. And these schools are supposed to be reputable and places to train and places to get experience and go work out and learn from these big professionals. And the ID program allows you to say, all right, I want to work for these big companies, and the big companies want to use you because they think you're the thing, that the process to possibly be a future WWE superstar, and they can say, hey, look, this guy started here and worked her way here, and I can put the WWE ID logo on my poster, which adds solidification to make my company look bigger, bigger than we are, and put those graphics on there. So then next thing you know, the talents come to your school because they want to be able to get recognized because you're a WWE ID promotion and school. So it means you can get more people to sign up to your training program, and more eyes are focused on you, and you're getting more attention, and you're getting better website coverage. And any wrestler promotion that uses these guys, they get better coverage, so it helps the overall business grow. And in reality, I 100% believe that it's also used to screw over AEW. One of the dumbest things I think Tony Khan ever did is said there's only room for one Khan in the business, and he's sitting there taking shots at the WWE. Well, have you ever thrown stones at a lion or a tiger or a bear or a gorilla? If you throw stones, they're going to come after you and rip your head off. And I think that's the problem. Is they thought that they were the hot shit, and in reality, they're just a cold turd. And now they provoke the bear, and they're coming after them. That's why they're going to have trouble getting future television deals, because WWE's got, what is it, everywhere now? You can see some kind of WWE. You got Tubi. You got Evolve. You got what is it? NXT is on CW. You got Netflix has Raw. ESPN has SmackDown. Has the pay-per-views. They're every basically big television entity out there, short of Disney and Fox. Disney and Fox are the only ones that don't have some kind of pro wrestling, especially with the WWE. And who knows how long it's going to be before you see Disney and Fox getting something.
Yeah, for sure. It's been an interesting year with these streaming deals. And, I mean, we don't know the extent of the Peacock deal either. I've been curious to see if they're going to leave Peacock altogether and take the library somewhere else. But,
maybe with the library, but Peacock's still the same company that runs USA Network.
Right.
And that's still NBC, and that's still they just, at the sense that the other day announced they're going to move Saturday Night's Main Event to the Peacock network now.
Yeah, so there's not a lot of room. So hopefully, AEW and for the business sake, that HBO Max works out for them. I've been reading some interesting thoughts about they're going to make some type of announcement that the pay-per-views are going to show up on Max at some point soon at a cheaper rate, but there hasn't been any solid information about it. And for such a big company and the number two, and I honestly I love AEW for what it is, but the pay-per-views, man, they're expensive. I mean, you totally get your money's worth. I love that you could potentially get an 8-hour show for the same price you're paying for 3.5 from WWE. But Triller and all of the outlets to get them, it's a pain in the ass. I don't really like to buy them. To be honest, my buddy will buy them and I watch them on his Triller after.
I don't even understand. Our dog, we just did an event at Rowan University. We had to run 4 hours. That's way too long for wrestling, but it's part of our contracts. We have to do it. 2.5 hours is perfectly fine. The one problem I think AEW has is they give you so much, and now they have nothing left over to give. Here's a perfect example. This is something I always try to explain to wrestlers too when it comes to all the spots they do. We've had a lot of flooding in New Jersey. And one of the reasons we had flooding is it rains so hard and it never gets a chance to absorb in the soil. And all it does is wash everything away and destroy everything in its path. That's the same thing in a wrestling match. If you do move after 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 move, one thing after another, nothing gets absorbed. Nothing gets put into your brain. It just gets washed all away. It becomes you remember nothing about it, nothing special. They need the chance for that rain to absorb in that ground so we could actually become useful water and become something that's useful for the environment and for the plants and for everything else. If it rains so hard that none of that water gets to absorb, then it just runs off and destroys everything in its path. That's the same thing with professional wrestling. If you do all these wrestling moves that nothing really absorbs, and that's the difference between being a wrestler who's a star with star power and a wrestler that does a lot of cool moves. Cool moves doesn't draw money, never has. It's nice to have good moves. If you could have a good wrestling match that knows how to throw moves in there sporadically and make these cool things happen so they're memorable, then you draw money. People, here's the thing. 5-star matches doesn't necessarily draw money. Personal issues draw money. It's all about, I hate this guy. He hates me. We're going to get in a fight, and one person's going to walk out there victorious, and the other person's going to walk out there injured. That's what draws money. When you watch superhero movies, you can watch Michael Bay movies and see all these explosions and all this cool stuff. But, especially like the Transformers or anything in the Michael Bay movies, you see all this explosions and action, but they don't necessarily are good movies. And that's the problem with Marvel's having too in some cases. They see all this stuff, but they don't understand what makes it a great movie. But everybody remembers Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
They had 2 parts of Avengers Endgame. You still to this day get goosebumps when you hear Captain America say, Avengers, assemble. That's because that's a personal issue. You wanted Thanos. He took away half of the world, and now these guys are fighting to get it back. All these people that you care about, these personalities. That's why that was great. And that's what's missing so much nowadays out of the modern Marvel movies. There's really not that greatness. There's not that build. There's that personality. They're just trying to always create the newest thing and oversaturate yourself. And Star Wars is having the same problem too, and with Disney and other things out there. You need less is always more. You need to give them just enough to make them want more. If you had a really, really good steak and you had it and you haven't had steak in a long time and you just had one and how was the most delicious thing? Now, if you ate steak for 3 meals a day for every single day, how great is that steak from that point forward? I love steak, and I possibly, if I could afford it, eat steak every day, but I know it would nowhere be as special and amazing. Same thing for dessert. You could eat dessert until you puke. But, after a while, then it's just nothing but fattening food, and it doesn't create that same thing. But if you haven't had a really good cheesecake in a while, and all of a sudden somebody gave you the most amazing cheesecake you've had, it becomes even more special, and you're always going to have a better memory and that better feel for that cheesesteak or cheesecake or cheesesteak. It doesn't matter, honestly. It's the same thing with professional wrestling. You give somebody so much that they become desensitized, that there's nothing special, that every move is no longer special, that the personalities are no longer special, the wrestling's no longer special. It all just blends in. And that's what professional wrestling needs to learn is you need to give somebody, I'm giving you an education. I'm sorry if I'm blabbering on. Here's the worst thing. I'm working on my business degree. The worst thing ever that people believe is a customer is always right. That is 100% bullshit. Customers right, wrong 90% of the time. It's been proven that if you let a customer do whatever they want, they will choose the wrong decision, worst thing for them possibly, a very large percentage of the time. The customer isn't right. The reason that expression came around is the expression is a customer is right in a matter of taste. So if a customer wants to wear a neon green and baby pink t-shirt and they like that and that's what they want to buy, that is right for them. If they want to eat pineapple on pizza, as disgusting as it is, that's right for them. But a customer's not right saying, this pineapple on the pizza, I don't like it, so I want to have my money back because even though I ordered it and everything like that, and I was telling you that's exactly what I wanted, but now, you know what, I ate half the pizza, now I want all my money back. That's not right. So it's the same thing too. People always think what they want. It's never about psychology. It's never about giving people what they want. It's giving the people what they need. You have to give them what they need so they come back and they always need it. You have to give them the best for them because, again, the customer will always choose. Here's a good example when it comes to nutrition. The number one selling protein in America is Optimum Nutrition. Anybody who knows anything about bodybuilding and nutrition, Optimum Nutrition is the very low quality product, but it's the number one selling company in the world. You know what else is number one selling? McDonald's. The best selling hamburger in the world is a McDonald's hamburger. But if you ever had a hamburger that's so amazing and juicy and thick, that's not a McDonald's hamburger. McDonald's hamburgers are great at 2:00 in the morning when you're starving, but if anybody says McDonald's hamburger is a great hamburger, then you have to wonder about their mental capability. That's the problem.
Now hold on a second. Hear me out.
No, I'm not going to fight you over the hamburger, but I might have to argue with pineapple on the pizza.
Yeah,
I think it's disgusting.
I know everybody does, but man, I love it. I don't know why.
Yeah, it is disgusting, but there's something about like ham and pineapple together on pizza that's just like so disgusting that it works. You know, it's like that it's good kind of thing.
And that's just it. That's a matter of taste. So if you want that and you want to pay me to give you hamburger, or I mean, a pineapple and ham on a pizza, and I'm your pizza guy, I can't tell you, well, no, I'm not going to make that for you because that's stupid. If you want that, that's fine. That's perfectly fine because that's what you're willing to pay for. But if you're going to try telling me that you want me to make pizza with lead, then I'm going to not do that because, you know, that's not right. That's not a matter of taste. That's a matter of stupidity.
Right.
You know? And the thing is too, like if you're going to tell me you ate 3/4 of pizza and then you try returning it, that doesn't make you right. That makes you a jackass. And that's the problem nowadays. People think that they have the right that they could eat 3/4 of a pizza and then try to return and get their money back. People can take the protein and leave you 2 scoops left and say, you know what? I didn't like it. Well, you had 2 scoops. You have 2 scoops left. You took so much of it. You don't deserve your money back. That's not what's right. People try returning electronics that they've had for 5 years, and all of a sudden they try to return and say, that's not working. And that is not the customer's always right. That's the customer's trying to screw you over.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to say.
Costco doesn't care though, because they'll take old plants that have been dead for 5 years and you can still return them for full refund. That is true.
Yeah, and that is true. And then you know why they're doing it? Because somebody convinced somebody that the customer is always right. And now the customer takes advantage of that. How many Karens have you seen who think that they're entitled to random stuff because they think somebody told them a customer is always right?
Yeah, it's a dangerous concept for sure. But you know, something that like you got into that because we were kind of talking about psychology and wrestling and how it kind of disappeared from a lot of I don't know, I guess the prime wrestling companies, but I feel like WWE kind of lost its way on that too. And one thing that I always cite, I think that from beginning to end, in my opinion, the best wrestling feud in history is Raven and Tommy Dreamer. And so much of that was based off of backstory, vignettes, and all of the storytelling that was happening outside of the wrestling ring. So like when we talk about storylines and stuff, I think like that followed very closely by Sandman Raven. I think like ECW just kind of had it figured out, and during the Attitude Era that definitely bled into WWF. But I would be remiss right now, I cannot think of the last time a storyline or a feud in WWE occurred where any of the storytelling occurred outside of the ropes. And I think like everything happened, it's all promo based now. Even in WWE, like somebody comes out, they'll cut their promo, they'll argue with each other on the mic, you know, it all happens on the stick. And I really cannot remember the last thing that, you know, like gripped me in that like visceral kind of gladiatorial way where I'm like, I'm super into this. And like, I feel like they tried 2 years ago in SummerSlam with Punk versus Drew McIntyre with like the silly wristband thing or like the bracelet or whatever. But even that, like, it was a lot of promo based, and I thought like kind of half-assed for the most part. Like even the Bloodline stuff that they did, like that all happened in ring, and I just kind of miss those days where you were getting vignettes of action happening outside, or like Austin breaking into Pillman's house, and Pillman has a gun. You know, like there's like so much like craziness that happened when we were growing up watching it. But like you know, when Vince was in the hospital and Stone Cold hit him over the head with the pan, or the
pan.
yeah, like there's just so much of that you don't see anymore. And I don't think it's necessarily like Spot Fest guys. I think it's just like blanketed everywhere. And I don't know if that's because for so long there was WWE or nothing. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have any insight?
The problem is a lot of people lost reality and realism in the part of professional wrestling. Everything became too much of a movie production, and all of a sudden there's cameras everywhere where people are doing stupid things right in front of a camera, like that camera is not there, like it's a completely, you know, there's a fourth wall that is not being broken. But there are things that still do happen. You forget that what's his name? Kevin Owens attacked Cody Rhodes in the parking lot watching people walk by.
Yeah.
There are things that still happen, but it needs to be done in a realistic way. If you want an example, like a really good example, look in the example where the Four Horsemen hire a cameraman and tell him he just needs to record and to do what his job is. And they find Dusty Rhodes walking into the Jim Crockett promotion offices, and they come in and they drive and they see him walking in and they attack him in the parking lot. And they handcuff him and they beat him up, and they're sitting there, and the guy's like, the cameraman's acting like he's appalled by this and he wants to get away. And they're like, look, we're paying you to do this, do what you're paid to do, just record this. And that was realistic. There's not a lot of realism back in professional wrestling. Here's an old school wrestling tactic that used to draw money. If the territory was getting a little busy and wasn't making a lot of money and they needed to do something special to build that up, they'd have two wrestlers walk down the street on opposite ends of the street, a babyface and a heel, and they would sit there and they would see each other and they would go across the street and they would get into an actual fist fight. Now, this was planned, but they would sit there and fist fight each other in the street, get arrested, get in the newspaper, get in the local news program on whatever television station is covering it, and sit there and you would believe that these guys were really, really to kick each other's ass because they just went and fought in the middle of the street. They got a criminal record, they got arrested, they get bailed out of jail, and the next thing you know, that building would sell out. You need to create personal issues, and promos have always been a part of the company. Always been, not always, but pretty much from the 70s on, have been a huge part in building up feuds and everything like that. Again, though, the problem is everything's so scripted, everything's so rehearsed, everything's so clean, everything's so produced, and it's missing that personal issue, that realism, that bit of I don't know if this is shoot. And the fact that anybody even says that nowadays, it shows me that there's the problem with wrestling is everybody always thinks everything's a work. They think this whole Roger Jackson thing's a work. Wrestling needs to find a way to make you believe again, at least suspend your disbelief. And that's lost. That art form is lost for professional wrestling because nobody knows how to do it nowadays. You get occasional veterans or somebody who's like Punk or whatever who knows how to draw that a little bit better. But nowadays, the only thing that happens that people give a crap about is like when Punk beats up Jungle Boy or something like that. Yeah. It's everybody always has to know what's everything that's going on, and they don't allow themselves to enjoy it. And that's the problem also, I think, with wrestling and wrestling fans and wrestling itself, is people don't let themselves enjoy it anymore. They have to have the that know what's going on at all times, and they have to have the spoilers, and they have to have everything else. One thing that always I see all the time now is people's like, "Oh, I'm so upset. The Punk and Punk and what's his name? Seth Rollins. It didn't have a clean finish. It had a dusty finish, and that's so disrespectful, and it makes me hate it." Back in the day, that's how you used to draw money because you'd have to continue to do so. So many people think they understand wrestling that they don't let themselves enjoy wrestling. You know what's probably going to happen is now AJ Lee's going to come back, and they're going to have AJ Lee and Punk versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. That's a big money thing, but some people is like, "Oh, I wanted a clean finish, and I'm so upset that I didn't get what I wanted." Because everybody wants what they have now. They cannot let it happen where they have to wait for it. People don't want to wait. They want that instant gratification, and they get upset. It's the TikTok mentality. It's the YouTube short mentality. It's the Reels mentality where they just get everything constantly in short little bursts, and they have no attention span to be able to enjoy it. And that's the problem with wrestling, is they don't give themselves a time to breathe and enjoy what's coming, because they always have to have everything right away, exactly the way they want it, or it's horrible.
But do you think that maybe that is also kind of a byproduct of how WWE spent so many years uncontested, and WrestleMania went from like, here's this big event, to like they started to like push the WrestleMania moment, like, and like in all of their programs and their promos and the battles on the mic, it was always like, well, here's a WrestleMania moment, right? And when you think like a moment is just like a brief moment of time, right? So did they maybe in a way accidentally condition people to no longer have the attention span for a long form story in wrestling?
This actually started probably around 1992, is the beginning of the death of professional wrestling as where people are starting to get things. And it's just wrestling, and honestly, there's other aspects to it. But with WCW not really being able to compete at the 1992 level, and WWF using those cartoon gimmicks, it completely pushed away the ability to really experience wrestling as a legitimate. I mean, yes, people have known for years that wrestling has been predetermined and stuff like that. But the problem is, after a while, it was insulting. It was very insulting what wrestling became, because there was garbage men and plumbers and it just became insulting to your intelligence, and very lowbrow and lowest common denominator. It didn't matter back if you were a doctor, or if you were a farmer, or a redneck, or an African American, or a Native American, or whatever. Wrestling had something for everybody, and was able to really connect to multiple different people, multiple different financial backgrounds, and ethnic backgrounds, and psychological backgrounds, and everything. The wrestling got left to kids and the lowest common denominator, and the kids grew up on stuff that is evolved what they believe their wrestling style is. Too much stuff was the Ultimate Warrior. People go like, "Oh, great, Kenny Omega's this greatest thing," but if you actually watch Kenny Omega, so many of his mannerisms are complete ripoffs of the Ultimate Warrior. It's what you grew up on, develop your particular feeling of professional wrestling, and that's everything too. There are people that grew up, like I grew up on the original trilogy of Star Wars, and that's Star Wars to me. And while I did like the prequels, people that grew up on the prequels, and that's to them what Star Wars is. And you're going to find out in 20 years from now, people grew up on the sequels, and to them, that's what Star Wars is, and that's what is it's not going to be the same. People that grew up on the Doink the Clowns and the Ultimate Warriors and the overly cartoon professional wrestling, the sports entertainment, that has changed what they are. People that grew up on the Attitude Era, it was the most financially beneficial thing in professional wrestling, the most greatest financial time in professional wrestling, with the most people watching. And it was also the most destructive thing to happen in professional wrestling, because everybody's getting everything at all time, and there's so much stuff happening, and there's garbage, and there's wrestling, and there's fireballs, and there's pile drivers, and women getting beat up, and all this stuff was so much that nothing became special anymore because you had to always try to do that. So with the comic books and the cartoon of wrestling causing people to do stuff, and then people were rebelling and starting watching Japan and Mexico, and instead of understanding what made them successful, just took what they saw and saw the cool stuff and didn't understand how to, when and where and why. And then wrestling schools becoming so popular and everybody can get into professional wrestling. And then next thing you know, everybody becomes a promoter and people who don't respect the business. That is why right now wrestling is what it is. I mean, WWE, they're partially to blame. ECW is to blame. WCW is to blame. The all the super indie stuff and the people who get into the business and wrestling schools who are just opening up to try to create money and don't care to actually train you and don't care to teach you like even the most basics, not just inside the ring, but even how to go out and get your own bookings and to how to work in the locker room and how to get respect and how to draw money and how to make money. There's so much out there now. Again, I apologize. I want a diatribe. There's so much out there that's one step, just one constant little thing that they're building. And that's why wrestling nowadays is what it is. It's what people grew up on. It has evolved. Their particular evolved what they think wrestling is, and that's becomes what their mind and their concept of wrestling is. And it's just going to constantly just get worse until they step back and somebody actually is able to properly compete with the WWE and bring in something that's different than the WWE is doing and be successful at it, then that's all we're going to see is what the WWE puts out there and what and what AEW and stuff is putting out there, and it's just going to lead to the further degradation of wrestling. Here's another business thing people don't realize. They always say competition is good for business. That is bullshit. Competition is never good for business. Competition's good for consumers. Competition's good for innovation, but competition's not good for business. If you say McDonald's and Burger King are on the same street and they're competing against each other and they're making money, only if there's enough money for a business, for multiple businesses to thrive, then it's good. And only if they're both really strong business. If you have a company like the WWE and then AEW comes along, it's great for the wrestlers and it's great for the fans, but it's not good for the business itself because now AEW is paying way more for wrestlers and changing the pay structure, and people are automatically getting money that they don't deserve. And there's people that are friends with people and getting hired, and the worst thing that's going to happen around a professional wrestling is AEW. You know why? Because if it wasn't for AEW, the WWE wouldn't be as strong as it is right now. If it wasn't for AEW, WWE wouldn't probably be on multiple networks and trying to control all of professional wrestling. AEW, if it wasn't for AEW, CM Punk, Cody Rhodes wouldn't have helped make the WWE what it is right now and making it the absolute juggernaut that it is right now. If it wasn't for AEW, some company could have came along and maybe got on a network, run seriously, and maybe given the WWE a run for its money and been a good thing for the business. But unfortunately, it was a guy who just wanted to play professional wrestling, play with toys, make a huge collection of toys that he has that he can play with, doesn't understand how to use them, doesn't understand how to make money with them, just wants to do what he wants to do, not for the betterment of the business, but for the betterment of his own enjoyment. And again, a lot of people are making money for this. It's great for the wrestlers. They're making a lot of money right now. A lot more than they probably would have if it wasn't for AEW. And fans get to see lots of professional wrestling, but in the long run, if they can't turn it around and they're put out of business, it's going to be so hard for anybody else to ever be taken seriously and get a real shot now. It's just strengthened the WWE's monopoly and just made it so much harder for anybody else to try to really create and be something. So if AEW was strong, if they were putting out a product that was drawing a lot of fans, growing the business, growing talent, creating new stars, putting out great television, putting out great pay-per-views, competing with the WWE, getting more people to come and watch their shows, getting more people to watch their television, and really building strong business, then we would have what we would have had in the 1990s with two competitive companies. They were able to make the business grow. We would have much more people watching. We would have a much bigger business right now, and everything would be better. But the competition, unfortunately, isn't strong. And so all it's doing is strengthening the biggest game out there. And in the long run, it's going to hurt the business just like it did when WCW went out of business.
Well, that is why it's so important for everybody to support the indies and to find your flavor elsewhere. And so I want everybody to support Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. And this has been a wonderful episode. I love picking your brain and getting information from you. That's one of the things I really miss about kind of like not being part of the business anymore. I used to get conversations like that from my trainers. So this was fantastic, man. And we kind of hit that mark where we like to call it. So I would be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity to plug away and get all of your upcoming events or links, anything that you want shared. Anybody listening to seek out for your dog wrestling promotion. So the floor is yours to go ahead and do that.
Well, we do have a couple events coming up on Thursday afternoon, October 2nd. We're going to be at the Rowan College of Burlington County. Now, it's exclusively for the students of Rowan College of Burlington County, but we're going to be there promoting professional wrestling. It's going to be nice. It's in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. So if you go to RCBC, you get a free pro wrestling event as part of that. After that, we have a public event on Saturday night, October 18th at the Sacred Heart Church, located at 103 4th Street in beautiful, historic Riverton, New Jersey. It's going to be Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators. You're going to see Dog Champion, Vinny the Fixer, if he's still champion, World Wrestling Grand Prix Women's Champion, Valerie Verman, if she's still champion, the David Goldie, the World Wrestling Grand Prix champion, if he's still champion, he'll be defending. The Primal Fear, the World Wrestling Grand Prix Tag Team Champions. Going to see great professional wrestling all the way through, and Daredevil Dave Dahl will be there too. So good, really great professional wrestlers and Daredevil Dave Dahl. But come check it out. That's at the Sacred Heart Church on Saturday night, October 18th. On October 27th, I believe, we're going to be having a table at the Nerd Force Fan Fest. We also will be back there in the spring. We'll actually have a wrestling event at the Nerd Force Fest, but this time we're just having a table. So make sure to come check us out. Get your autographed wrestling memorabilia from different wrestlers from DAWG Pro Wrestling. We'll also be part of the South Jersey Geek Fest. That's in March. We'll be back at Rowan University in April. No date set yet. We'll be back at Rowan University usually around April because we do events there every year. We're also looking to expand out there. We're trying to get back to Rowan College of Burlington County and the Monmouth University. Hopefully next summer, we'll be back at the Monmouth County Fair. We did 5 days there, and it was really awesome. Don't forget to check out our YouTube page. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you never miss an upload of Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators action. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Make sure you talk about DAWG Pro Wrestling. Share all that information. Help professional wrestling, help DAWG Pro Wrestling grow. Our link tree is up above. You can follow us in just about everything that there is out there, including Reddit, and you'll get all kinds of information. And make sure you listen to these guys at the Watchers Digital Networks, because you want to see these guys to talk about everything that they're going to talk about, and maybe they'll have me back in DAWG Pro Wrestling, and I'll have some wrestlers who are part of the thing too. And hopefully next time it'll be so much easier to get on.
Yeah.
I feel like you owe us a receipt for the difficulties getting on.
So. Yeah, that was a lot of. I eventually figured something out, but boy, that was a lot of work. And I still, every time I tried to give the video, the app shuts down. So I stopped.
We're reviewing some other alternatives as well, but I think there's only been one person that didn't have any issues getting on.
Yeah,
so
that guy.
It's not just you.
It's been an incredibly pain in the butt experience, but man, this was great. I loved every second of it. We will definitely have you back. I feel like we could, chat you up for hours. But this was a great first start, man. I super appreciate it. Everybody, check them out because it's important to support the indies and to seek your flavors out. Don't let the big corporations run everything. And these dudes are doing something really cool. Thank you again, JC. Wherever that outro button is, he's gonna press it. You're free to go. We're not holding you hostage any longer. If you want, you can go ahead and dip while he goes ahead and hits that red button.
I'll actually stay a little bit so I can talk to you a few minutes afterwards.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, no, for sure.
The button's purple, by the way.
No, purple
magenta.
Button.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.